Welcome to Living a Life by Design. It's the journey back to you and living 365 days of purpose with your host, Esther Graham. Did you know your accountability and possibility is by design? God designed a phenomenal life for you, gave you the gift of choice. Esther helps empower you to discover and pursue the purpose that is already in you. Are you ready to look at yourself and see your future? Then get back to what is really important in life and get in alignment with your true self. Stay tuned to Living a Life by Design. Journey back to you and start living 365 days of purpose with your host, Esther Graham. It all starts now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Life by Design podcast. I'm so super excited that you are here. And I'm even more excited that I have my very special guest, Coach Sean Smith. So I'm going to have I'm going to have him reintroduce himself, but I just want to talk about Sean for just a minute. I met Sean, I guess it was maybe about maybe about 4 years ago. And it has just been phenomenal. Sean is a coach. He is my coach, one of my coaches. He is a friend. And through what I have learned from him in coaching, not as a coach myself, but just for me personally, it has dramatically changed my life. And so, I think that Sean is a well-kept secret. And I just think that he just needs to be out there more because what he brings to you, it's life-changing. So I just want to introduce Coach Sean Smith to everyone. So if you're on Facebook right now, if you're looking at the replay or wherever you are, Spotify, Apple, just go ahead and heart him up and just welcome Sean to the Life by Design podcast. So happy you're here, Sean.
Oh, you're one of my favorite people on the planet.
Thank you.
I honor you so much. Thank you for the invite. I'm thoroughly excited to be here.
I'm glad that you're able to put it in your schedule because you're doing so much right now, and I know you're busy. So I feel honored that you put it in your schedule just to be here. So today, what I would really like for us to discuss, and I'm just going to hand it over to you, is really speaking about neurotransformation, which is really something, if I'm not mistaken, that you really developed and created, and that's really how our mind how we can through our mind create new neural pathways to really change how we live. That if we can just change, how we think, right? Change those pathways, we could literally just change our lives, how we live, how we feel. So can we just talk about that? Because I know I'm not giving justice. So I'll turn it over to you.
Oh, that's we're talking about my favorite thing in the world to talk about in terms of personal development. So yeah, neurotransformation, it's neuro is neurological. So what it means is that you can genuinely and authentically change your neurological experience on the planet. You can change the way you feel. You can experience things that you never experienced before, such as joy or elation or deep gratitude or fulfillment, or you can stop experiencing things that are in the way of your life, what you want to experience. So it could be healing traumas or removing certain fears and going from anxiety to certainty in certain areas of your life. So it really is a fundamental neurological change. And the first time I experienced it, Esther, was in 2005. You've probably heard this story a few times. I was at an event and I had this emotional breakdown, and there was a guy next to me and he took me out to the hotel lobby. He was going to do a process on me. There was nowhere to sit because all the chairs were taken. So he sat me down on a piano bench and he walked me through this process. And in about 15 minutes, fundamentally changed my life. I got up and I felt different. I went home that night. My wife said, "What happened to you? You look different." My friends started saying, what's going on and where do I get it? Because I was energetically changed. And so I've been doing this work ever since. I've been convicted. I had a moment where I just said, everybody needs to know what I now know. Yeah. And since that time, I've just devoted essentially my whole life's work to studying the mind and how can we make these neurological transformations, and why do certain things not work for us as humans, and why do things work, and what's the difference between people who succeed and people that fail. So I've just got a real curious mind, you know that, and your mind operates the same way. Like I always want to dive in and I want to know the science behind it. I want to know the science of developing better habits, or the science of removing obstacles and sabotage. And so that's what I've been doing for the better part of 20 years. And I did coin, I don't know if anybody else is talking about the concepts they are, but we now have kind of a branded term called neurotransformational coaching, which is not just this work that people can experience, but now we teach coaches, you being one of them, to be able to do the work, in whatever capacity. It doesn't mean you have to be a coach in order to implement. It could just be in your family or leadership. And I know you infuse a lot of it in your business, and just, anywhere that you touch people, there's going to be transformation, happening, or transformational conversation. So that's the essence of transformation, and how I got started in it.
Yeah, I think it's so powerful because I know for me, it really changed my life, and even changed the way I handle situations and in business. And, even earlier today, I had a meeting with my leadership team, and, again, using some of that just in conversation, was I think it was one of the best meetings that we've had. And, when I first connected to you, my mom had just not too long, as a matter of fact, in the middle of doing the courses, the ECCP, which is the training coach for coaches. My mom passed away. And it was because I was in there. It was because I was learning that I was really able to really process, my mother passing away, and just all of the dynamics that brought to the table, family, friends, just everything. And every time I look back at that, I just think, Sean, that if I wasn't connected, if I didn't learn what I learned and wasn't able to use the tools that I gained, I would not have handled it as well.
That's such a good piece, and thank you for sharing that. It's really important for us to understand how the brain works.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us are going through this human experience in cases like, like you're talking about, grieving, or fears, or starting new jobs, or ending relationships and getting into new ones, or transforming the one that you're in any capacity. And we don't really fully understand, I think, what the human experience is like with this human brain, because I don't believe that we're taught what the brain actually does and what it can't do. And the reason I think this is really important is because a lot of people are setting themselves up to fail with false expectations. Yeah. So like one of the biggest ones that I've seen is the relationship that people have to fear. A lot of people think that step number one on any journey toward getting your goals and dreams is get rid of your fears. If I could just get over my fear of public speaking, or get over my fear of the spotlight, or get over my fear of whatever, then I can take the action. And that's one of the most misunderstood concepts, because you have a human brain that will constantly generate fear, but you have to understand why. It's doing it to keep you alive.
Yeah.
It's literally doing it to keep your body alive. So you cannot tell a brain that is wired and programmed to generate fear to stop generating fear. And if you did, you would literally be dead inside of a day or two, because it's the same survival mechanism. So It's not about getting rid of fear. It's about changing your relationship to fear. And then when people understand what their brain is doing, and the brain's just going to brain, your brain's going to brain because that's what it does. Yeah. Now you actually have a chance to manage and navigate, rather than try to change the reality and expect your brain to do something that it can't do.
I love what you just said, is that it's changing your relationship to it, and not getting rid of it, because that's really what we've been taught, fear isn't real, just get rid of it. And, and we've got all these acronyms for fear. And yet sometimes while we try to do all that, it's like, but wait a minute, I'm still afraid, I'm still scared to public speak or to go here, or I still live with it every day. But changing the relationship. When we're about to go on a break, but when we return, let's talk a little bit about how can we change the relationship to fear or to anything else that really has a hold on us, let's say. That sound
Love
good?
it. Yes, love it.
We're going to go on a break and we'll be right back in 60 seconds or so. Welcome back to Living a Life by Design. And my special guest is Coach Sean Smith. And we will continue our conversation. But before we do that, Sean, have a couple people that are saying on Facebook saying so true. And someone is saying, hello, good morning. I'm watching from Kenya. And someone is saying, this is good stuff. So just some comments I wanted to read back. So continue commenting on the various social media. We love to hear from you. When we left earlier before our commercial, we were talking about the relationship. How can you change the relationship you have to fear or anything else?
Yeah. So this analogy just kind of hit me. Like if you see somebody yelling at a child, right? Like you just see, okay, here's an adult and there's a child and they're just yelling at the child. Mm-hmm. You might immediately go, that's not cool, right? Like don't yell at the child. But then if you expand your awareness and you realize that the child was about to walk into a busy street and the person was just yelling at the child to get their attention so that they don't walk into a busy street, then it would probably change the way you see the act of yelling at the child, right? So it might seem like a weird analogy, but it's really powerful when we zoom out and we recognize why we have these fears. Yeah. And none of you have fears because there's an entity inside of you that's trying to hold you back. There is no part of the human spirit and soul and body and mind and intellect that doesn't want to win. There's no part of us that wants to be miserable, that doesn't want to succeed. There is no part of us that doesn't want to hit our goals. However, there's a more powerful part of us that wants to stay alive. There's a more powerful part of us that wants to be safe emotionally and physically. So the brain's number one priority is to keep you alive physically. The brain's number two priority is to keep you safe emotionally. Right. So if we understand that virtually all of our belief patterns, all of our fears, all of our addictions, even all of the things that we think are the problem, and I'm putting that in air quotes if you don't see the video, all the things that we think are the problem are not problems, they're protections. So they're protecting us from something else that we are afraid of. It could be that we're afraid of abandonment, or we're afraid of getting hurt again in a relationship, or we're afraid of losing money again. I filed bankruptcy 13, 15 years ago. I'm afraid of filing bankruptcy again. Like we're afraid of repeating our past catastrophes. Mm-hmm. And so our brain is constantly trying to protect us from pain that we've either experienced before or we're afraid of experiencing in the future, or both. And so if we zoom out and go, I don't have a procrastination problem, I have a procrastination protection habit. Then it changes our energy, because Esther, it's really hard to get angry at somebody who's trying to protect you. Yeah. So, and think about this. Why would anybody or anything want to protect something? The only reason that we would want to protect something, that in my analogy, that the person would yell at the child, is because they care about the child. Right. That's the only reason that we would want to protect anything. So if we understand that these are protection mechanisms, then we can take it a step further and go, oh, these are actually coming from a place of care and love, not from a place of anger or resentment or a desire for us to lose. Because if we think there's like this entity inside of us that wants us to lose, then we're going to fight against it as though we're adversaries. Right, right. But we need to recognize, no, this entity is trying to protect us because it loves us, because we love us. So then It's just coming from a different perspective. So that fear of public speaking is a protective mechanism. It's not a sabotaging pattern.
Right.
And
right.
that energy shift is important because then, as you said earlier, then it changes the relationship to the thing. And when we can change the relationship to the thing, then we'll communicate different, we'll manage it different. One of the things that we say all the time, but it's hard to do without this shift, is you can't destroy your fears, but you can dance with your fears.
Ooh, I love that, dancing with your fears. Yeah.
But you got to change the energy that you have in relationship to the fears before you even want to dance with them.
Right.
And then
right.
you can dance with them, right? Like what I always tell people is your fear, you need fear, right? But you just want your fear to be your co-pilot, not your head pilot.
Right.
Right. And
Yeah.
then it's actually very useful and we can co-create. So that energy shift is really important at a foundational level, but that only happens if we understand how this brain works. Otherwise, we're going to tell this brain that doesn't have the capacity to do things that it doesn't have the capacity to do. And then we're just stuck and you know, we're doomed to failure from the beginning.
So what I hear you saying is that once we understand how the brain works, and when it comes to fear, procrastination, we can push past it because now we understand it. We now have a relationship with it. Our perspective of it has changed. And so now we won't stop what we're doing because of fear. We're now going to push past it because we realize that this is a protective mechanism, and it's doing this because it wants to keep me safe, wants to keep me from hurting myself.
And then it's easier to take the action. And really what you're doing is you're putting the targets where they belong. Now, that also doesn't mean that some people don't have work to do.
Right.
You like in relationships. This isn't just a Pollyanna approach, like, oh, okay, well, I know that you love me, therefore I'm just going to dive into the next relationship.
Yeah.
Because patterns repeat unless and until we learn the lessons from those patterns. But we can't learn the lessons as long as we're in this adversarial relationship, right? So it allows us to put the targets on. And if something's trying to protect us from a danger, we want to know what that danger is. And again, in the relationship analogy, it's just kind of an easy one to do. Like if you check in and go, okay, what is this pattern trying to protect you from? You're just trying to, like, you don't want the heartbreak again.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So now let's look at that. Let's look, were there red flags? Was there something that you needed to learn? Was there an attachment? Was there some kind of belief? Like, what lesson did that relationship have for you to learn? And then if you learn that lesson, then your next relationship cannot be a repeat from the previous one because you've learned the lesson. But if you don't learn the lesson, and this is where so many of us are caught in not just romantic relationships, but friendships and business and relationships with our body. All we do is just keep repeating the lessons or repeating the experiences because we haven't learned the lesson. So it's about putting the target where the target belongs, which is the real issue. And now we can do something with it.
Do you think sometimes we don't learn the lesson because we want things to happen fast? So we know that this is, we need to change how we think. We need to change those pathways, our relationship. But I think sometimes, we expect it quickly. I use the example when I was telling you about my mother and how it has really helped me in dealing with the loss of my mother, and just the whole dynamics around that, losing a relationship through her death and then losing other relationships because she transitioned. But I didn't get it right away. I had to keep going back and saying and working on my relationship to that loss and just beginning to change how I felt about it. My whole mindset towards all of it. Does that make sense?
100%. And I think it's because we don't understand the process that we tend to rush it. And we want to just get to the other side of the discomfort.
Yeah.
With grief specifically, I don't think we are taught very well what grief is and how prevalent grief is and how you cannot rush grief. You can't microwave that. You can't microwave your healing. You can't microwave your growth and development. You can't. But We want to all the time, you know, and that's also a function of the brain. The brain wants to conserve energy at a neurological level. The brain is always trying to conserve energy, which means it will always look for shortcuts. And so if somebody were to say, now you can spend 5 months grieving, or you can spend 5 minutes grieving, the brain's going to go, give me the 5-minute one. So we have this natural temptation towards saving time that actually works in our favor in many areas, but not with growth and not with emotions, and certainly not with grief. But here's the cool thing. When we don't try to rush the process, it usually goes quicker.
Yeah.
When we try to rush the process, it either takes longer or doesn't happen at all. So again, this really comes from understanding what human grief is. And grief is not reserved for only death.
Yeah, that's right.
We grieve anything that changes our comfort. So when we move, this is really prevalent with children. When children move schools a lot, or when they move houses a lot early on, or when their parents get divorced, or when their friends change, those are all grieving incidents. And I call it micro grief, because we don't really think that we need to grieve the fact that we lost a job, or the fact that we moved, you know, houses, or the fact that we don't have a certain relationship anymore.
Right.
But if we don't learn how to micro grieve, we have virtually no chance when we need to macro grieve. And that is usually reserved for the, you know, the big stuff, such as death, or, you know, really traumatic experiences. So part of the human experience is grief. And we want to be grieving as best we can constantly. Here's the other thing though, but that doesn't mean just crying. You know, grieving doesn't necessarily mean having a breakdown in the emotional quicksand. It's just being emotionally expressive enough to allow the human body what the human body wants to do.
So therefore, leaning into it, is that what you lean into it instead of moving away from it?
Yeah, it's like if the dam is going to break, it's going to break.
Yeah.
And we all, pretty much all of us, have uncried tears, and stuffing them doesn't make them go away. It just means that they now poison our bodies.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's leaning in.
It's leaning in. I say that because I know sometimes when I feel as if I can't deal with it, I'll walk away and I'll leave it. And it goes back to, you know, I just don't want to feel that pain. I don't want to feel the hurt. So I find a way to just leave it and walk away, but it's not unresolved. It's still there. You know, it's still there. And what I found, of course, like you teach, I need to lean into it and then go through the whole process of the healing, of changing the relationship, changing how I see it, so I could be healed from it, or on that path to healing.
Yeah. Well, emotions buried alive never die.
They never die. That's one of my favorite sayings that you have. And I think it's so important, especially when we're speaking about, you know, the brain and how we, and just everything that's involved. I guess I'm amazed, especially when I listen to you all the time, honestly, Sean, with just how much the brain just really affects everything that we do, to the things that we don't even think about. I want to talk about that just a little bit when we return from this quick break. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Living a Life by Design. My special guest today, again, is Coach Sean Smith, and we will continue our conversation. But first, I just want to read some of the comments. Valerie says, I am still dealing with the loss of a dear sister friend. This is good to hear. John said, uncried tears is an interesting concept. Love it, love it, love it. So much is in what we are talking about. And I want to go back to what we're learning today, is how it can literally just change your life. That you can go from sadness to joy. You know, you could now have happiness. And I like to say, even in the middle of challenges, simply because we've changed our relationship to what we're experiencing, meaning now that we've also changed the pathways. I like to think of the analogy, Sean, you know, when you're in the woods, or like where we are, we're surrounded by farmland. Of course, I think they sold the farmland, and well, I know they did, and they're building homes. But children sometimes would walk at the back. And so they'll, when someone goes to a pathway this all the time, in the grass, eventually a pathway is made to where now everyone sees it and they can walk that way, right? And so I think about that when I think about neural pathways, right? Transformation, that we have to now create pathways, right? That will bring change continually. But we can't just do it one time. It can't be, when you see a pathway in the woods or a trail walk, it wasn't created just, one day. It was through people walking there every day, every day, every day. And I believe that's what happens, what we need to do so we can change maybe some of our patterns, some of the things that we do. That's how we can change relationships, by doing these things every day. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's so critical to understand. And just the whole concept of understanding is important because we can't control something we don't understand.
Yeah.
And what a lot of us are trying to do is control an emotional body or neural pathways that we don't understand. So the reason that we talk about, the understanding of these things is so that you can control them. And when we talk about grief, for instance, or just being emotional in general, it doesn't mean that every time you've got some emotional triggers that you should cry. It doesn't mean that you just have to be expressive in the moment. But when you understand the process, it makes it easier to say, okay, this is something that's coming up for me. Maybe right now, while I'm driving or while I'm in the middle of the boardroom or while I'm having a different discussion, now's not the time to let this trauma out. Now's not the time to, to confront anything, but I know I will later. Or I'll allow it to happen when it's ready to happen. So much of this journey is just about allowing reality to be reality. And it doesn't matter how much we want reality to change, it's not going to change. So going back to this idea of neural pathways,
right.
It is the way the brain operates. It's such a perfect analogy. It takes a lot of walking to make a path. And in our brain, it takes a lot of actions or a lot of intense emotions to create a pathway. So you can have a pathway created in the brain if one thing happened to you, but there was a lot of intensity.
Okay.
If there was a lot of trauma or just a lot of pain or something, you can create a pathway because it was so intense. Most of our pathways are created with repetition. And what's really important to understand is that if you have a pathway that's been created and the little kids in our brains have been walking that pathway for 30 years, you're not going to change it in 30 minutes because there's just too much momentum that's already wired and the brain is constantly firing with what's familiar. And so if we understand that we're trying to undo 30 years worth of programming, it'll change our relationship to the process. And then we won't try to get the shortcut to that. And then here's the good news. It won't take 30 years to undo, but it won't take 30 minutes either. Right. It'll be somewhere in between that generally. And then understanding everything that we've talked about, then it's easier to confront or conflict or just let tears flow or anger. It's not just about crying. Yeah. It's also about some of the good emotions too. A lot of us have stuffed joy or fun and laughter. A lot of us have become stuffing machines in all of our emotions, not just the good ones or the bad ones. It's all of them. And so if you want to be more emotionally expressive as a human, this is the stuff that you got to understand and then lean in, as you were talking about earlier. And then there's one more piece of this, Esther, that I think is super critical, this piece of neural pathways, when it comes to building habits. So a lot of us want to change the results that we have in our lives, right? We want more money. We want less fat. We want better this and less of that, right? We want the results to be changed. In order for the results to be changed, the recipes must change.
Love it. Yes.
Because it's the recipes that will command the results. You can't just go into the gym and just because you're motivated, stay in the gym for 12 hours one day and make up for 12 months of not going into the gym. In fact, right, you've done that too. I'm just speaking from experience. This is not theory here. This is experience, right? And whenever I would have those crazy like makeup sessions with the gym, the next 7 days were extremely painful because of the damage I did to the body when I was motivated in the gym for 4 hours. So,
and then you stop going. I did because it's too painful.
Exactly. Like I'll see you in another 6 months when I try to climb some more stairs and get winded. And then get frustrated and get right back into it. Right. So with patterns, with habits specifically, you first need to understand that habits command the results. And so if you want to change the results, you have to change the habits. But if you want to change the habits, consistency is more important than intensity. Going back to your analogy, if those kids were running or stomping really hard, it still wouldn't have created a pathway.
That's right.
It requires repetition. And just like our brains will require repetition. So consistency is more important. I would rather you do something consistently 5 minutes a day for the next 2 months than to get motivated and do it for 9 hours tomorrow. The consistency, number one, will start to change the results better, but the consistency will also be more foundational for us. And this is, again, something that we need to understand what the brain does. The brain gets all motivated. And that's why, everybody's making all these New Year's resolutions on January 1st and the gym parking lot is empty January 19th. Did you know there's actually a day, I think it's the 19th, that's called National Quitting Day, because they say that's the day that most people have already quit on their New Year's resolutions because they don't understand this concept.
Right.
They're trying to use intensity and motivation. So if you want something to change, you guys, you need to understand what are the shifts that have to be incorporated in your habits, and then set yourself up to win with consistent small changes that can build rather than intense short changes that will fall.
This is absolutely great because I think that, not great, it's just powerful because we don't achieve that because honestly, we live in a microwave society. I know for me, it's taken me 30 years to gain the weight, but I do want to lose it in 1 day or 1 week. And so, I'm going to go to do whatever, I just stopped with the gym because I said it just doesn't work. But, I do these things. I want it quick and fast. Yeah. And what I have found is when I'm consistent in doing what I do, then the changes, it's lasting because I'm breaking habits that I've always done, those habitual things that honestly keep us from achieving the results that we want. Happens to us in business too, Sean.
Yeah, almost everywhere. It's that microwave mentality. And almost everything that we do that actually can create quick results, like dieting can create quick results, but the things that we have to do to create the quick results will usually do more damage long-term than what it's worth. And I think I remember hearing that the average person gains 2 pounds per diet that they try over the course of their lifetime, because the diet actually causes the body to have to recover and then gain more weight. So we do want to make these quick shifts, and we live in such a hack society. I really despise the word hack. I understand the intention behind it, but most of us are trying to microwave our results, and that's why it becomes so difficult. But if we have the foundation, the most important word I think you said is lasting. If you want lasting results, then you have to set yourself up for lasting change. That's going to require you to recognize that it's not the sexy drop 8 pounds in 2 days kind of results, but it could be keep 8 pounds off over the next 2 years that fundamentally changes your life.
Right. And I think that's so important because, this is in every area of our life, that if we take our time and we're consistent with our growth in every area, then it's lasting. But we're so trained, and especially in the society that we live now, everyone's looking for that quick fix. I need a quick fix. I need to grow this. I need to get here quickly.
Yep.
And what I have found, let me just speak for myself, that it doesn't work. And then when it doesn't work, I become sad, discouraged, disgruntled, all of these different things because the quick fixes did not work. And what I have to do, I have to go back to the drawing board and say, what is it I need to change?
Quick fixes lead to quick failures, and then it
Mhm.
gets frustrating.
It gets frustrating. It gets frustrating. We're about to take one more break, and we will be back in about 60 seconds. Welcome back. Welcome back. Let's continue our conversation with Sean Smith. Sean, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, so I was just reminded of one of the coolest experiences that I've had that relates to all of this. Seemingly has nothing to do with any of it. It was a golf lesson that I took maybe 10 years ago, and I've been playing golf for 25 years or so at the time. And it was the first golf lesson I ever took. And so the golf instructor said, "Let me just watch you swing for a while." He said, "Take 5 swings." I took 2 swings and he's like, "Timeout. I don't need any more." He just saw what he needed to see in 2 swings. He said, "Do you want the good news or the bad news?" I said, "Give me the bad news." He said, "Everything you do is wrong." And he goes, "No." And I mean, when I say everything, I mean literally every single thing you do is wrong. And so I go, "Well, I mean, how can there be any good news after that?" Right? He said, "But the good news is it's because you set up wrong. It's because you're standing on your feet wrong and you're holding the club wrong. Everything after that, when you set yourself up wrong, everything after that is overcompensating. So your poor body is trying to overcompensate from the bad position you put it in. And if you're overcompensating, there are just certain things you cannot do with the golf ball because you're overcompensating, but it's because you're set up wrong." I say that because most of us are setting ourselves up wrong with the expectations that we have that are just not reality, or with the quick fixes that we try to find because we don't have the right mindset. So one of my favorite things to talk about, because it's so necessary and so prevalent everywhere, is not the focus on confidence, which is what so many people are focused on. They think, you get rid of the fears, you have confidence, and you go do all the things. It's really to change focusing from confidence to resilience.
Resilience.
I had a conversation with somebody, and I would imagine you agree with this, Esther, from a parenting standpoint, that one of the most important pieces we want to give to our children is resilience.
Yeah.
We want them to be resilient. We don't want them to try to avoid, life knocking them around a little bit. We want them to get back up when life knocks them around, because we know life is going to knock them around. And that's the same thing for entrepreneurship. That's the same thing for almost any endeavor in life. The most important skill to have is, and maybe it's not even a skill, I'll say the most important muscle to build is your resilience muscle. It's your get back up muscle. It's not your not get knocked down muscle. But most people are trying to build their not get knocked down muscles rather than build your get back up muscles. And here's why that's important. When you know you will get back up, when you trust yourself to get back up, now you won't be as afraid, if at all, of getting knocked down.
Right.
And when you're no longer afraid of getting knocked down, you'll take the risks that are necessary to grow, to succeed in business, to succeed in relationships, to succeed as a human in any way. So and in that regard, you can kind of get rid of some of that fear, but not by getting rid of the fear, but by placing your trust in your resilience. So I think that's one of the most important muscles for us to build. And it's one of the most important areas of evidence for us to gather, because every single one of you listening to me right now, you're undefeated.
Yeah.
Life has not defeated you. You may have gone through traumatic experiences. You may still be carrying around some trauma. You may still be carrying around some grief. You may still be battered and bruised, but you're undefeated because you're still up. You've gotten back up. It may have been hard and it might still be hard, but you're undefeated. And a lot of us forget that. A lot of us forget that every experience that we've ever gone through hasn't defeated us yet.
That's right.
And if we could just grab some of that evidence to say, you know what, I trust my get up muscle, therefore bring it on.
Yeah.
That will do much more good for our confidence and our certainty than let me try to figure out a way to not fail. And resilience can only be built after failure. So let's stop trying to avoid failure. Let's recognize that failure is a necessary ingredient in the process of building resilience, and go out and fail as much as you possibly can. Now, I have a different acronym. You mentioned the acronyms for fear, and I hate most of them. But but for failure, an acronym that can help you remember this is that fail means to find answers in life.
Ooh, I love that.
All you're doing, you're just finding answers.
Yeah,
So
I love it.
Fail and fail and fail.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I'm reading, Jonathan says, I hear Creed 4 coming.
Yes. Dun, 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 dun.
Resilience. Valerie said, when you trust yourself enough to get knocked down, you're able to get back up much easier. And that is exactly it, right? When you trust yourself, get knocked down, just get back up. Resilience. And really, as I said, those are some of the things that we teach children,
Yes.
Come on, get back up. You can do this. You got this. You got this. Get back up again.
And with children, you know what? I think there are some things that we teach children, and then there are other things that we just should not teach children.
Good.
Because the children already got it, right? Children already know how to get back up. You don't have to tell a little kid learning to walk to get back up. They're going to bounce back up.
They're going to bounce back. Right? So true. So true.
We bring a lot of our adult programming to the kids when they already got it right. Like the kids are not, when they're 2 and 3 years old, comparing themselves to others and seeing if they're, their butt looks fat in the diaper.
So true.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that, we bring that to them. So a lot of us from a parenting standpoint or leadership is get out of the way and not restrict them with some of our limiting beliefs or our fears.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Kids are amazing.
They are amazing and can teach us so much. Sean, give us 3 quick steps that we could do something immediately to make some changes in our lives. And then tell us how anyone can get a hold of you.
Perfect. Well, on that note, go fail at something. Go do something that you're uncomfortable thinking about, but do it for the lesson that you're going to learn. And then write that lesson down. I would say the second thing is when you wake up tomorrow, don't plug in to some device, unplug from every outlet and plug into yourself, plug into your thoughts. Listen to what you have to say over the first few minutes of your morning rather than reacting to what somebody else has to say. And then pick a single habit that you want to incorporate for less than 5 minutes and just do that for the next 7 days. And when that gets a little easier, then you can stack onto it. It's kind of like learning how to juggle. When you want to learn how to juggle, don't try to juggle 7 bowling pins at once. Juggle 1 and then learn 2 and then learn 3 and then pace yourself and stack. So I want you to commit to the long game by making small changes, and let's see, where that goes once exponential momentum kicks in over the next couple of months. And I think you asked, where can people find me?
Yes.
Everywhere online, I'm Coach Sean Smith. That's my website. Those are my handles, COACHSEAN Smith. And I'm relatively easy to get a hold of. I'd love any of you, if you have questions for me, you want to, relate to anything that we talked about here or reference, please get a hold of me, send me a DM or send me an email. I'm easy to get a hold of. And I love people that want to get in these conversations.
Yeah. And listen, if you're doing those 3 steps, go ahead and let us know that you did it. You did this for 7 days. You unplugged and, just let us know so we could know how you're doing. Connect with us, connect with me on my Facebook page is Esther Graham or Festa Della Donna. Join me and let's do life together. Let's live a life by design. If you're thinking that your life may be out of design, I would just want to tell you that you can redesign your life. You can redesign your life by just changing the way you think. right? Thank you so much for joining. Sean, thank you. Thank you so much. We're going to have Sean back again. He's very busy, y'all. He's very busy. So I'm grateful that you took the time to come today to share with me and with the audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Esther. I appreciate you a ton.
Thank you. Thank you. That's it, everyone. See you next time. We're here every second and fourth Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Living a life by design. Read more. Read more. Bye-bye, everyone. Take care.
You have been listening to Living a Life by Design, the journey back to you, and living 365 days of purpose with host Esther Graham. Listen or watch live every second and fourth Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific on TransformationTalkRadio.com. Discover that what is possible is already in you. God designed a phenomenal life for you. Esther helps you ignite that energy behind your personal journey for a deeper joy and peace, living 365 days of purpose. For more information on living a life by design, visit fddwomen.com.